Lord Krishna starts insulting Arjuna by asking him why he has come to such a despondent state and why he is not able to act manly. And with his insults, we also understood the rationale why Lord was speaking or Krishna was speaking in that way, because he sensed that Arjuna was still having that defensive ego. That's why to trigger further his emotions, he has told. And after his insults, we will see that Arjuna starts giving uh, furthermore statements that how can he kill his gurus who are worshipable or who are persons of reverence. And also he says that instead of killing them, I will go to the forest and start begging there, and whatever I earn, whatever kingdom I earn, will not be something to cherish for me, because it will be tainted with the blood of all the people whom he likes, all are his gurus and elders. So we start until here. What is the difference between the ego and the defensive ego that we were talking? Now let's analyze a bit further. The renunciation of Arjuna's due to his nature. When we think of Arjuna, Arjuna is Kshatriya. His state, his natural inclination is to fight. And he is a person who looks forward for praises. And when he goes to the forest for begging, will he be able to be what he is? When we ask this question, it clearly, the answer that comes to us is it doesn't suit his nature, because his nature is not going to change. How can we say that his nature is not going to change? I'm going to give a couple of examples. This is just an example to say a person who has become a sannyasi will just leave his family because the person has escaped his duties, because he was not able to take care of the family, and he just goes that he wants to renounce the family, go and do some other activities. So he goes to some temples and starts living there. Whereas his wife will take care of the children, bring them to a nice state, and after that, she has that contentment of doing it. The person who goes there, again, he will get some trouble in that temple. From there, he goes to some other place. And from there, again, he goes to some other place. So at any place he goes, whenever a trouble comes, he starts to escape from it. So the dress that you wear really doesn't matter. And another example is there is a sannyasi or a Swamiji who was called to a bank to give a talk about spirituality. He gives a lot of half an hour or 1 hour talk about spirituality to the bank employees. And when he was completing his speech, he will tell to the bank manager, can I talk with you for 5 minutes? Yeah, the bank manager agrees. They come out and they talk separately. And what this Swamiji will ask them is, what are the ways that he can invest, or what is the best way to deal with black money? Then the bank manager comes to the employees, and the employee starts asking, what was that he secretly told you something that he did not tell every one of us? Then the bank manager will tell, we are all in the same kind of problems. They are also having whatever problem we have, they are also having, but it just differs in the amounts, and we just think them very much clean in their thoughts because of the dress they are wearing. In the same way, with regards to renunciation, the place does not make any difference. What makes difference is the state of mind. Unless the state of mind of Arjuna changes to be a true jnani or a true a non-violent person, it makes a difference. But being in this nature, if he wants to go there and do something, he will not sustain that kind of life because of his nature. On the similar lines, there is an example where a king who was very, very bad in terms of he was alcohol addicted. He used to treat people very badly. He used to do all extreme things for badness. He once comes to Lord Buddha and says, I want to join as your disciple because I want to change myself. All the disciples there will tell to Buddha not to join him because he is a person of so and so kind, please don't bring him into our group so that we all also will get affected by him. Then Buddha says, no, it's okay, let him join, he will certainly change. After a few days, he will take up this practice very intensely. When all these people start walking, they normally walk without slippers. So when they were walking barefoot, this guy used to actually walk on these people, other people used to take the shades of the tree so that they might not get too much of heat, but he walks in the mid of the roads without actually going to the can everyone go on mute? If you want to ask anything, you can unmute. I hear some background noise, please. Okay. So he walks on the barefoot, and after 6 months, he comes near Buddha and says, see, I have completely changed. He would have become like 1/4 of what he actually looked. He would have become so lean. If all these people ate once a day, he used to eat once in 3 days. So intensely he would do the practice. And the Buddha would say, no, I don't see any difference in you. Can any of you think why Buddha might have said that there is no difference in that person?
Because mentally, I think he didn't change. Physically, there can be a change, or still he is comparing that he is good enough with his other disciples or not.
Yeah, the thing is like his intensity or his character, there he was doing intense bad things. Here, the same intensity was there for that person.
Okay.
He has. So when you see people with intensity, right, even they will do good at the same intensity because that intensity is the nature of the person. In the same way he was doing, then he will ask him, you know to play veena, right? So he says yes. Then what will happen if I string the veena strings very tightly? He says it gets broken down. What will happen if I let it loose? He says that, yeah, you cannot produce the sounds that you want to produce. It will be a cacophonic sounds, or it will not be a melodious sound. Then what do you need to do for you to play the veena melodiously? He says that you have to tune it to the right amount of stiffness, which is not too tight, which is not too loose. So that then he says, yeah, you have to also have the attitude of that kind of thing so that you will not be too intense at any ends or too loose at any ends. So your character has not changed. So wherever you go, you will not find a true change. What needs to change is your mental temperament. Then only you will be able to find a change for you within yourself. So the same here with Arjuna. When you take this example to Arjuna, when he started the shlokas in the first chapter, he was saying that he wants to go and see. So he was like bubbling with the like the enthusiasm to fight against the opponents. But when it comes to the end now, in the last shloka, he wants to be a total saint where he wants to renounce everything, go to the forest and beg. So these two are the extremities. A person who is so intense cannot go and lead a life in the forest. Even he goes only for a couple of days, he might survive. After that, he starts doing his own, like he might start shooting arrows and whatever his thing that gives him pride, he starts doing that. So these are just the analysis for the previous verse to just let us understand that just by changing the dresses or just by saying that I will be doing this, a person really doesn't transform because his attitude has not transformed. What really takes you for transformation is change in your mental temperaments or a change in your mental states.
Mind change करना चाहिए. जगह change से कुछ नहीं. कपड़ा change से कुछ नहीं. You have to change your state of mind. You have to have that.
Let's see the next shloka. Any questions until here for these analogies?
No, Abhi.
Okay. न चैतद्विद्मः करतन्नो गरीयः Yadva jayeya yadi vano jayeyuhu Yane vahatvana jijivishamaha Devastitah pramuke dhartarashtraha. So he's saying now, nor do we know which is better for us, that we should conquer them or they should conquer us. The very sons of Dhritarashtra, whom having slain, we do not wish to live, stand facing us. So now he's from this state of telling all the reasons, he's now coming to a little bit confused state within himself. He's saying that now we are not knowing what is better. Should we conquer them or should we let them conquer us? They are standing in front of us. So these two are the questions that now Arjuna has. Like he's feeling that whether he should fight and risk unnecessary violence despite of being a Kshatriya, or whether he should refrain from fighting and live by begging. All these considerations by Arjuna definitely proved that not only he was a great devotee, but he is also an enlightened soul. That's the reason that he is again coming back to the control or a confused state from that complete emotional state. Now he starts turning within himself to ask questions to himself. So he is now showing the signs of doubt. So we have seen the sattva, rajas and tamas in the second chapter when we were dealing with the chatur varnyas or the four the caste systems. In the same way, the three temperaments can also be applied to our intellect. So when our mental temperament is in the state of sattva, or when our intellect, and when we reach the intellect, instead of when we are in the status of sattva and we reach the intellect for the question. So when we are reaching the intellect is when we are trying to analyze the situation. At that time, you will clearly know the path of actions and renunciations, and you know what ought to be done and what ought not to be done. So this is in the case of Arjuna's thing that I have put. So if he has been in the state of sattva, he would have clearly known the path of action and path of renunciation, and also what is to be done and what is not to be done. And if you are in the rajasic state of mental temperament with your human intellect, then he understands wrongly path of action and renunciation, erroneously concludes what ought to be done and what ought not to be done. And this is the state where Arjuna is currently in. He is understanding the path of action wrongly and he wants to go to the path of renunciation. And he erroneously concludes because of his baseless arguments what is to be done and what is not to be done. So both the conclusions, whatever he gives, is not an appropriate one. And if he had been in the tamasic state, then everything seems to be perverted. Even the right seems wrong, and the unrighteous seems to be righteous. So that is the state of human intellect when you are operating through the three mental temperaments. And from the current state of Arjuna, we can clearly conclude that he is in the rajasic state of mental temperament. And what has to happen is he has to move back to sattva instead of falling down to tamas. Here he shows that he is displaying the detachment by telling that he will live by begging, although he was born in the royal household. Karpanyadoshopahatah svabhavah pritchami tvam dharma sammudhachetah yacheyasya nishchitam bruhi tanme Shishyasteham shadhimam tvam prapannam. Now he again, in the previous verse, he started doubting himself as what is to be done. He started a bit of confusion within himself. And now he says, my nature is overpowered by the taint of pity, the compassion that whatever he had, Karpanya dosha, that is making him overpowered. And now he admits that his mind is confused. Dharma sammuda chetaha. He is not knowing what is dharmam. He is confused as what is his duty. And he says, I ask thee. He is asking, tell me decisively, which is good for me? I am thy disciple. Instruct me who has taken refuge in thee. So he is now totally surrendering to the Lord Krishna and telling, I'm not able to decide for myself. My mind is totally clouded. My intellect is not functioning. We saw it. When the mind gets clouded, intellect will cease to function. That's why he is not able to take decisions. Being at this stage, he did not plunge into any kind of decisions, even though he was clouded with emotions to a peak. After his emotions, after he went out all his emotions, he again starts reflecting within. This doesn't happen to many of us at many times. What happens is that emotion still continues further, which brings us down to an undecisive state, and we start to go into depression. Now the state of depression, he did not hit that complete state of depression. Before he hit that point, he started looking within. That's when he starts getting confused. Do I need to fight? Do I need to go to the forest and beg and stay there by lead my life by begging? And immediately he says that his nature is, he recognizes that he is overpowered, his mind is overpowered with his emotions, which he admits, confesses, and surrenders to the Lord, asking him for advice. So I'm taking refuge in you. You tell me what is good for me. I am your disciple. Sishya steham. Sishya is disciple. Sishya steham. Shadi mam tvam prapannam. So he says, you tell me what is good, and I am your disciple. So if you see here, he states, I'm confused, please instruct me. And why did this confusion come? Because of his emotion of being tainted by pity, which is kripa. And now he asks, should I fight? Should I refrain? So these were the two confusions he had. Should I fight or should I not fight? So he started doubting his intellectual stance that he had taken from the beginning. So whenever these questions come, you are trying to reach your intellect. Because when does the discriminative factor comes in? The discriminative or the rational factors comes in only when you are touching your intellect. When you don't touch your intellect, there will not be any discriminative functions happening within you. Instead of all these emotions, he started to reach his intellect now. And he started asking himself questions in a state of what should I do, what should I not do? And he felt that his state is not in he is not in a state to take a decision because of his overpowered emotions. And at that state, being not knowing what to do, he surrenders completely to his friend, a dear friend, and also his guide, just saying, accepting the truth that he is not able to take any further decisions because of his inability. So he humbled himself here and accepted his ignorance. This is the time that he started looking within. So at any point of time, if we also start to look within ourselves at these crucial moments, the perspective towards things and the problems, the way in which we approach the situations will totally change. So he tells, I'm thy disciple. I take refuge in you. Tell me what is best course of action for my ultimate good. He chose Arjuna's complete surrender. True Guru gives advice only when the disciple is fully prepared to receive it. The question we had, why was Krishna so silent? Why could not he stop Arjuna in the middle of his illogical statements? He would have said, because he is anyway his guide and friend, he would have stopped Arjuna at that point of time and said, no, Arjuna, and started giving advice. Or he could have told him that he is getting the argument spacelessly, but he did not stop. At many points, we just saw or analyzed the Krishna's state. We understood that Krishna was silent because he was waiting for the right time for him to address. So this is the time. In spirituality, this is very much followed, that too particularly in the sect of Upanishads and Vedantas. It is given only when the Guru senses that the disciple is ready to receive the knowledge. Their state of mind, their attention, and their preparedness is very, very essential for them to pick up this knowledge. So knowledge is not, it's taken and it's not given. So Arjuna has to take the knowledge. It's not like you give when the other person is not ready to take. The other person should be in a complete state of receptiveness. That's when you start giving a spiritual lesson. So whenever we get source of perplexities, we have to approach the spiritual master is what is actually suggested. But now we might get a question in the modern context of terms, where is the spiritual guru, or what do we do when we get the source of perplexities? So when we internalize these concepts, it is that whenever we run into emotions, always trigger your intellect, or always try to look within for a discriminative analysis within you, so that you will be able to approach. So Krishna and Arjuna outside is actually internalized to be our mind and the intellect, Arjuna being the mind and Krishna being the higher intellect. So it means when Arjuna is reaching out to Krishna is that whenever mind is creating a problem, we should have the mind in such a way that it also goes to the discriminative side to trigger your intellect so that you will be guided properly. So it's like we don't know how the emotions came out in Arjuna. So whenever when you are walking inside a forest and somehow you see a fire coming in the mid of the forest when it is totally very sunny, or there are no signs that the forest could have caught, you will not know the source from where the fire got the forest got the fire. In such a way, many times in our lives, we will have lot of perplexities or confusions that happen within us emotionally. We don't want such kind of confusions, but such confusions happen even without our knowledge. Unconsciously, many times these perplexities happen. No one wants fire, and yet it takes place and we all become perplexed. In the same way, we get a lot of emotional turbulences at many points in our life, which we are not looking for. And that emotional turbulences leads us to a confused state. So whenever we have to solve the perplexities, particularly the perplexities of life, we need to understand the truths or the universal laws with which we operate. Here in the discourses, it was given as spiritual master. And here currently, when we are talking about this kind of place where we are living, when we talk about a spiritual master, we might not really able to find out a master at that time to get a disposal. The thing for us is to learn the truths of life, to understand the universal laws of nature, and try to use our discriminative capabilities to solve the problems. So in one of the Upanishad, it is given that a man of perplexities is one who doesn't solve the problems of life, but he quits the world like cats and dogs without understanding the signs of self-realization. So a person who is subject to escapism is a person of material perplexities. He will always be confused because he doesn't know how to solve a problem. Wherever a problem comes, he just escapes. So in other words, he is a man who does not use his intellect to solve his problems. So any questions in these two verses? Any more explanations you need?
No, Abhi.
Nahi prapashyami mamapanudhyat yacchokamuccoshanamindriyanam avapya bhuma vasapatnamrutam rajyam suranam api chadhipatyam. So now he says again, in the previous shloka, he surrendered completely. And after surrendering also, he's saying that I do not see that which can remove the grief, which is drying up my senses, even on obtaining prosperous and universal kingdom on earth and lordship over the gods. So he says again, if he fights and he wins and he becomes prosperous, still his mind, his indriyanam, his senses will not be satisfied, or his senses will not be happy. And I don't know what could satisfy my senses, even if I win this battle. After surrendering, he still says that he cannot enjoy his winning, or when he goes into the battle, fights against them, and he gets the kingdom, the prosperity is something that he cannot enjoy. He completely surrendered, but his mind is still filled with grief. Still, he has at some point the feeling that if he goes and fights the battle, he will not be able to enjoy, because his enjoyment, the thing that he said in the second stanzas or in the first chapter also, is because not that he doesn't want kingdom. It's just because when he wins the kingdom or when he starts being a king, there will be no one, the people dear to him, who will actually praise him. And that's the reason he cannot enjoy the prosperity which he gets by killing all of his relatives. So when emotions overpower a person, he feels depressed. They sap his energy and reduce him to a state of helplessness and despair. That's what happens, mental draining, mental diarrhea. Many a times physically we won't get so much drained out. And if you really see the drain that's happening, that's because of the mental dissipation of our mental energy is getting dissipated because of our emotions. And these three are tragedies written by Shakespeare: Hamlet, Othello, and King Lear. These tragedies end up in such a way that at the end, the people will fall below and below into agony and anguish, and they will not be able to get up again. That's why these titles of the books are tragedies. When we take the story that's happening now, the first chapter is Arjuna Vishada Yoga, which is a kind of a tragedy, a kind of depression, or a kind of tragedy. But when we see the end of the Bhagavad Gita, it ends with Arjuna getting self-realized. Here, in these stories, there was no hope in the tormented lives. All the stories were written in such a way that the end, the people sank lower and lower, and they were not able to raise again. So if you see the intellect levels, they were falling below the intellect levels and coming to tamas, and they were not able to raise to a level of sattvic. And when we compare both of this, why the people who were mentally depressed at that stage were not able to raise, and why Arjuna at this mental stage, when he was depressed, he was able to raise after getting a proper discourse at the end of the chapter 18. Any views? Why do you think the tragedy of the Arjuna became self-realization for Arjuna?
Because he
Everyone
has
throws
a positive, he had a positive guide who
He had
kept,
a
Arjuna was full of negativity in the beginning. So his negative intentions and negative mindset led him to the depressed thoughts. But later he was given clarity by the positive vibes of Krishna. So it ended in positive outcome.
See, when we see Arjuna as a negative emotion, the emotion that Arjuna was carrying was not really a negative emotion, in the sense like he did not have jealousy, he did not have grudge. The compassion is materialistic compassion. But when we see in the emotions perspective, we cannot term it as negative, but it is a positive emotion only, an emotion of compassion. But the reason for that emotion is not right. That's what we were saying. So it's not actually his negative emotion, but his state of despair came because of his strong emotions, either good or bad. That's what we were talking about, that emotions will make us to a state that we will not be able to think. After coming to that state, he surrendered completely to Krishna, and Krishna starts advising him. It's not just because Arjuna listened to Krishna, Arjuna became self-realized. The way of Arjuna's listening to Krishna is with total attention. When we go through the chapters one by one, we will see the kind of questions Arjuna triggers. and understands each and every concept and sees what he could apply. With it's that 40 minutes made him self-realize because his mental status was at such a high level. So that kind of preaching transformed him very quickly. But the thing that we need to understand is it just not because he was in an emotional state, surrendered to someone, and because Krishna said something, he said, okay, I'm going to do it. See, many of us at many instances, if we are emotionally struck with any kind of problem, we go to our dear ones or to trusted people and tell them our emotional state. And if they tell us one thing, most of the times, if you are really in that utter state of depression, we just take whatever they say and try to implement it without even thinking for ourselves that whether whatever he has said will suit me or not. If we feel it so comforting because we had no rational capability at that time, we were totally clouded that we are not indecisive. So whatever decision our trusted ones say, we just go with it. Is it true or not?
True, very true.
So here that did not happen. He told many things, but Arjuna did not accept everything at once. He nailed down to the point of what can I apply? How can I apply? What can I apply? How can I apply? Till the end. So that was the reason for self-realization. It was not just because Arjuna studied Gita or got the direct discourse from Lord, studied with the 700 verses of conversation, he became self-realized. That is not the takeaway. The way a disciple or a student approached and attempted to change his life with the practicality and application, the realization that he carried within himself. For him, that time, he was already a spiritually evolved soul. How can we say? By seeing the previous births of Arjuna, all mythologies, when we study how he was born and all, he was really a spiritually evolved soul. But when we are starting from this stage, we have to do our actions properly and come to a state where we will be able to be receptive. That's why every time when we say we are here to study Gita to analyze and not in terms of good or bad, but in terms of cause and effect. So once we start, whenever we said we have to reach our intellect, it is that we have to stop asking good or bad, have the truths in place, know the truths of life, apply the universal laws, and then ascertain if I want this cause, what is the effect? For example, a small example. You know that when you place your finger on a candle, it burns. So the effect, what effect you want? You want your finger to be burnt or finger not to be burnt? Okay, I don't want my finger to be burnt. Then you should not keep your finger into the candle. You cannot keep the finger into your candle and say that I don't want my hand to be burnt. That will not happen because it's not abiding to the law of cause and effect. So we have to understand the universal laws to whatever state, whatever action we are doing, whatever effect we are desiring to have. You either correct the cause. If you are not able to correct the cause, you accept the effect. The thing that we do most of, why we are getting stress is either you are not accepting with the cause, law of causation. You have a wrong cause, but you expect a different effect, which is not possible. And that's what is creating a lot of stress. Having negative emotions within you, expecting a positive experience with outside you is not possible. You have to radiate with positivity to experience positivity because the universe abides by the law of attraction. Is this clear, or you have any doubts in this? Why the self-realization, Arjuna was able to get that self-realization? It was not just because of what Krishna has said, but he being receptive and applying it, taking it to a point of complete application for him. So Arjuna overcame grief after imparting the profound knowledge of Gita. He was rehabilitated with a new vision and energy. He rose again and fulfilled his role as a leader of his forces. So The Vedantic philosophy in Gita enables you to face your challenges in life and relieve your mental tension, enabling you to play your part in the world and fulfill your obligations in life. So this is not just by reading it as a philosophy, but living the way of this Vedantic life or the Gita life. If you lead the way the Gita prescribes, for sure we will be able to face all the challenges in life with grace. Any questions or any explanations you need more?
Nothing, Abhi.
Okay. Sanjay uvacha एवमुक्त्वा हृषीकेशं गुडाकेशः परन्तप नयोत्स्य इति गोविन्दम् उक्त्वा तूष्णीं बभूवः. So here he has spoken to Hrishikesha, who is Krishna. So Sanjaya is now narrating to Dhritarashtra. Till here Arjuna was talking, and now it changes, the narration changes. Now Sanjaya is explaining to Dhritarashtra what is happening in the battlefield. He is saying that after speaking to it, after telling all these things, Arjuna now says, I will not fight, and he becomes silent. The words, the names are just Rishikesha, Gudakesha, Parantapa. Rishikesha is referred to Krishna. Gudakesha and Parantapa are the names of Arjuna here. So he says, Nayotsya iti Govindam. So he says, Govinda is again Krishna. He says, Nayotsya, he is not going to fight. And Uktva Tushnim Babuvaha, he became very silent after telling this. So he surrendered. Then he said, even if I win, I will not be able to enjoy. And here he narrates that after speaking all these things, he finally said, I will not fight. And then he becomes silent. तमुवाच हृषीकेशः प्रहसन्निव भारत सेनयोरुभयोर्मध्ये विषीदन्तमिदं वचः. Now Sanjaya's narration is continuing. Here Bharata is referred to Dhritarashtra. So he is telling to Dhritarashtra that in the midst of two armies, Hrishikesha is Krishna, smiling as it were, spoke these words, O Bharata. So Krishna is about to speak. So he's saying Krishna is speaking these words in the middle of two armies, because if the scene started there, he first says Senayor Ubhayor Madhye Radam Stapayam Echyuta. So he stops, and there he sees in between the battlefields, and then he becomes despondent there in the end of the first chapter. And now again the description comes that they are still in the middle of the battlefield. Senayor Ubhayor Madhye Vishidantam idam vachaha. So he is saying these words. And here there is a significance. Why do you think that Krishna is smiling with a smile? Here they say Prahasanniva Bharata. Prahasanniva is like a kind of, I don't know what to say in Tamil also. Renu, you know Chirunavu in English? It's like smiling a bit, not like mocking anyone, but
just a smile of that. Yeah, I know it, and it's a good sign, not in a negative way. It's a nice, pleasant smile conveying that I agree. I'm agreeing what you're thinking or what you're saying.
It's a kind of smile.
Smile, yeah, small, just a little smile, just a curve on your lips. That's it.
Yeah. So he is having that. Krishna is having that. So there are different analogies given as why Krishna could have smiled at Arjuna. One is striking difference in Arjuna's attitude from warrior to the shameful behavior, the extremities. Because he was having that extremities, he understood that he was having that problem, and as a friend, as a guide, Krishna rightly diagnoses his problem, and he now triggers the insulting words and makes Arjuna feel that he is in a state unable to take his decisions and seek for a decision. Because at the end of the first chapter also he says, we are not going to fight. He clearly concludes at many places we have seen that he concludes at many statements that this is sin. We are not going to do it. Tadasmakam, that word came 2-3 times. That was the conclusions of Arjuna. Now, because he is surrendered, he has the smile, or it could be because as both of them are related. And third thing could be an inner satisfaction of having a specific cure for Arjuna's mental paralysis. So he knows what medicine he can now administer to Arjuna. Not the physical symptoms, but for his mental symptoms, what could be administered is a kind of thing. And when we see here the relationship between Krishna and Arjuna, those two people know each other very well. Let's take we know our kids. So my daughter comes to me, like she got upset for something and she says she doesn't want to eat dinner. So she just goes and lies down on the bed. She's still hungry, but she goes and lies down on the bed because she is upset. She doesn't want to eat. And I make a very favorite dish of hers, which she is able to smell. But because she said she doesn't want to eat, she will not get up and eat. And every time she keeps on seeing me and saying, Amma, I don't want to eat. Amma, I don't want to eat. But that I don't want to eat, inner sense is that she really wants to eat. But it's just I have to call her or I have to go and convince her to come and eat. At that time, we get a kind of smile. You know internally what that person wants and why that person is behaving in such a way. Then you feel that smile. So that is the exact kind of smile here is being explained as Krishna smiles at Arjuna. Are you able to get that relationship now?
Yeah, Vita, very nice
Yes.
analogy.
Yeah. So that's the kind of thing, the attitude, because he surrendered. And again, he says, he wants to, even if he gets the kingdom, he will not be able to satisfy his senses, or he doesn't know what will actually help to make him happy. And again, he becomes silent. When he has surrendered, he should have kept quiet. No more statements, right? He has totally surrendered and Krishna has to answer. Again, he takes one more verse saying that, if you see here in this verse, after surrendering, he says, not here. Yeah, he says, I will not fight here, but before this was, yeah, he says, after surrendering, he says this verse, that I don't know how I will be happy by getting this prosperity and kingdom. After surrender, if you have kept quiet, then it's understood that you don't want to fight or something, you have completely surrendered. But still this one, the same way as our kids do. So Krishna clearly strikes an emotional bond with Arjuna. So he knows, okay, fine, I know what he wants and what dosage to give. So that is the smile that he signifies there when he looks at Arjuna after this incident. So when we go and call, if I call my daughter, go to her and say, it's okay, fine, fine, come. Say some pleasing words, she will readily come and eat without any hesitation. And here, Krishna did not take to any place other than the battlefield, meaning the appropriate place is not needed when you are emotionally down. Place doesn't matter. Wherever you get confused, at that stage, you have to immediately reach out to your discriminative factor. So Krishna did not drive the chariot to a quiet place and to a place where everyone is there. What it means is that when you are in a confused state, that's when you have to employ your discriminative faculty. Not when we are normally without emotions, we all have the discriminative faculties. When someone comes and shares their problem, we will confidently say, if I am in your place at that time, I would have done like that, I would have done like that. If the same scenario comes to us, we know what we will do. So the same thing, like the place is not important. For gaining self-knowledge, at whichever place we are, the teacher and the student matter at this point of time, which implies that our mind and intellect should always, our mind should be always reaching to intellect, immediately surrendering to intellect whenever it's not able to take any kind of decisions. So they are actually best friends, and then now he becomes students. He says to accept him as a student. Shishyasteham shadimam tvam prapannam. So he says, I am your student, you teach me, and you are my guru. So the talk between the master and the disciple was openly exchanged in the presence of both the armies, so that all of us are also benefited. So this is not aimed for any particular person, society, or community, but for all. All the friends, enemies are all equally entitled to hear them. So that's why we call this as an universal knowledge, which is applicable to the complete humanity. It doesn't say any sects of people or any kind of discrimination that it puts that only if you have these qualities, you can read Gita and apply Gita. It's open to everyone in this universe who are seeking to change their lives. So any questions for these 5 verses? So the next verse is where actually the Bhagavad Gita main preaching starts. So the Krishna starts telling Arjuna, or starts giving reply to Arjuna, the actual reply. The first 2 verses in the second chapter that Krishna gave are just the insults to Arjuna. That doesn't have any kind of preaching in terms of the truths or the laws. So we will be continuing from this verse, 11th verse, in the next class. If you have any questions until here, I am happy to answer.
I have a doubt, Abhita.
Yeah, Uma.
So you were saying that Arjuna is like the mind and Krishna is the intellect,
Higher intellect, yeah.
higher intellect. So
Yeah.
now the mind is clouded here, but it's filled with emotions. But generally, we associate emotions to the heart, right?
See, physically speaking, you associate like uh, feelings come in the heart, but when you see autonomically, both are in the mind. So when I say mind and intellect, they are the parts of your brain. So mind and heart are the same. It is, I'm referring to the feelings. But
That is what I
actually,
wanted to ask.
yeah,
Is mind
mind,
and heart the same?
yeah, some hridayam, they say hridayam. And if you see in the scientific way of telling, it is your mind.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, but both means the place of feelings. In many places in mythologies or in these things, we speak hridayam is taken as a place of feelings, and buddhi is taken as manas, and buddhi, or hridayam and buddhi is taken in Sanskrit. Buddhi is
Okay.
called as intellect, and hridayam is manam is your feelings.
Okay. Okay. So here, so heart is always heart or the mind, as you're saying, is the student or the disciple, and
See, heart
intellect.
means you don't think heart as a function of the heart. Again, when it comes to the function, when you take heart as a function, again, it comes to a point that heart is the core of your body. But it is not. The feelings are Arjuna. When we say the mind, it's appropriate to say mind because mind is the storehouse of feelings. But when you think Arjuna as a heart, right? Again, heart becomes the core of your body.
Okay, so our feelings, if we can say that
If you consider just heart for feelings, yes, you can completely take Arjuna to be the feelings. You consider it in the heart or in the mind. He is the realm of the feelings.
Okay. Okay.
Any kind of emotions.
Okay. So so in these verses, the main thing you're saying is whenever you have confusion or whenever we have doubt or we are clouded with thoughts, we should always resort to the intellect. That
It's
is
just like
Krishna.
don't react, just respond. Simply saying that one only. Don't
Okay.
react, just respond. When you stop reacting, you reach your discrimination to respond. That's what we are saying. Don't react, respond.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, Abhita.
Any other clarifications needed?
I have a doubt, Abita.
Yeah.
Last week, I felt like Arjuna is more egoistic, kind of. I got such kind of feeling actually. Like he said that I will even go to that forest and do,
Yeah.
and but he was very sure that he's going to win also, right?
Yeah.
Something.
Yeah.
Then suddenly, then this uh, sudden emotional change, right? To accept and then he surrender. Is there anything that we can make out, like how that happened?
No, how that happened in the sense like that's what that reflection happens. See, when you take these three states of human intellect, right? He was in this state of passion and action where he was clouded. But his nature, when you see his nature of Arjuna from the standpoint, he is a sattvic person, meaning that he was highly intellectual, highly rational and all. But just at that point of time, he clouded because he was already in that state. He did not fall back, but he was able to come up. That's why he was able to look within himself and start to ask himself, what is that I am going to do? I'm going to take this path. Everything came within him only. The confusion came within him, and the question also came within him only.
Okay.
It came within him. That's what we are understanding from this discussion is that whenever we are confused, whenever we are in emotional state, we should not take decisions immediately. We should also try to analyze. That's what, not to react, but to respond. In the sense, you ask yourself the analytical questions.
I
He
think
was
what he's trying to ask, and even I have the same doubt, Abita. Like last class, you were saying about the defensive ego of Arjuna. How he is defense, he has a defensive ego, and even that example that you gave, where the
Yeah.
five of them go to a tree and ask,
Yeah.
tell. In that his thing was of that he has to hurt back Karna. So he had that ego in him.
Yes. All
And
that came out. See, that ego was triggered by, see, everything was a trigger from Krishna. The words that he told that he is not manly and all, he started telling about that ego will continue only to some point of time. And that is where Arjuna wished that the tragedy did not end as a tragedy because of this change in Arjuna's behavior of self-reflection. Till this point, he was having that ego. But once he started that self-reflection, in the sense like looking within him, and when he started asking himself and understanding that he is incapable of taking decisions and surrendering, that's where the change is being made. Some say that it is the play of Krishna to get Arjuna to such a state. We don't know what is actually truth or what is not. But our takeaway from here, from these verses, or from the understanding is that whenever we are in such a state, whenever it's said here as surrender also, we use our intellect more than the mind. We don't become too much emotional. And when we are becoming emotional, we become aware of our emotions and regulate them properly.
Yeah, but Abita, see, if we know Krishna is like supreme power,